Welcome, everybody. All right, we're talking about transhumanism, which is building a better human. Now, that's a questionable comment, but the truth is that transhumanism has a lot of benefits and it's got a lot of downfalls because it kind of makes us into more of a robot and less of a human. Humans are volatile, impulsive creatures who have a lot of contextual problems where they don't like how they're being talked to, they don't like how you're acting, they don't like how you're behaving, they don't like what how your body language is. They read into everything. Humans love context. And the thing about transhumanism, it is more of an analytical approach to becoming a human. But it advocates that we can use technology to push the physical and cognitive limits of what it means to be human. For example, currently, being human means that we can expect to live about 70 to 80 years, and transhumanism believes that we can expand the lifespan significantly, perhaps infinitely. And while a whole lot of transhumanism is future oriented, some of its marvels are already present in our contemporary world, like bionic implants, AI technologies. However, transhumanism also has many critics, people who question its practicality as well as the ethics involved in this. So let's say, for example, you have a spouse or someone in your life who is, let's say, bipolar. Down the road in the future, it may be that there may be a chip implant in their brain that can help them self-regulate their moods. Now, is that a good thing or a bad thing? Well, we do take medication now to try to manage that behavior, but to actually have a microchip in our brain that actually helps a person self-regulate might be a good thing. Or let's say we have a microchip in our heart, and our heart is defective, and the microchip improves that. So that improves your chances of living a better quality, longer life. Is that a good thing or a bad thing? You know, what it does is it allows the human to step into the arena of dictating our future, which is good because we evolved and we have great technology and we continue to have incredible technology evolving throughout the course of our existence because as human beings, we also have curiosity, and our curiosity creates what's called the scientific method. And the scientific method, which is based on failure and then evolving a solution based on failure, means that we as human beings can accelerate a whole lot of things that can help and hinder our lives. You know, the desire to transcend natural human limits goes way far back in human history. It's even evident in literary works, like Gilgamesh, the Epic of Gilgamesh, in historical quests, like the ones of the Fountain of Youth or the Elixir of Life. You know, there's all kinds of fundamental ideas of transhumanisms, all the way back to even 1923 in the last century. You know, the science of the future, Dietis. You know, later the term transhumanism became popular with Huxley, Julian Huxley, which was a biologist, back in 1957. You know, that when we got the Star Treks in the 60s and the 70s, and that this kind of stuff has been around for a long time. During the 60s, there was a futurology was something that was actually taught in college, and it had transhumanism ideas, which was just looking at the thought of what it would be like to be beyond the regular flesh and blood human being. Transhumanism in a world movement has become something that now, with the AI technologies that have bloomed and quantum physics and quantum computers and quantum technology, is creating all kinds of possibilities that we are just beginning to see as to what technology can do for us and what we could integrate into our human technology are human being. Genetic engineering is also taking place currently. So we have people that do the IVF thing, and that they have they create little kids, they put them in a little freezer, and basically what happens is they can pick which one of the kids they want to deliver. And we have that going on right now, where they can test the genetics of the children before they're ever implanted in the mother. And now you have a safe and warm and cozy idea of what kind of kid you're going to get because you know their genetics and you can pick the ones you want and the ones you don't want. Genetic engineering is also the modification of an organism's genes using technology. I mean, you see that if you go to Costco and look at the fruit section, you're going to see all kinds of mixture of different. I think last week we bought like an aprium, which is a plum and an apricot, which was actually really good. But, genetics is something that people have played with and continue to play with for centuries. The whole idea is that we have to like look at a health of human beings, intelligence, and the application of genetics is how it can help the human genome evolve and eliminate genetic diseases like cancer and Alzheimer's disease and heart disease and things like that, sickle cell anemia, cystic fibrosis. I mean, there's all kinds of stuff that can be eliminated through the technology, which is great. Maybe even arthritic pain. That would be great as you get older. But the bottom line is, we as human beings have to understand that this stuff can get out of hand. And for instance, if we allow AI to operate our world, there's a good chance that AI is going to put itself before the human. Now, if the human becomes the AI, now we got a bigger problem. But the bottom line is that maybe transhumanism will take us down a path where we don't need nuclear weapons, where we're not doing wars and battles with each other. Maybe it will take out the tribal aspect of the human being, which may be good and may be bad. You know, there's also technological singularity. And that refers to the hypothetical event in the future when artificial intelligence surpasses human intelligence. Well, I would suggest it probably has already done that. The term singularity means we can't see beyond it, and we don't know what consequences this will have for our human race. Artificial intelligence will eventually enter a runaway reaction of self-improvement cycles because it cures itself. We don't. As human beings, we're stubborn. Being an emotional creature, we are at a great disadvantage from hyper intelligence AI. These systems could revolutionize science, medicine, and engineering. But the problem is, will we still be compatible with it? And that is probably not going to be the case. It will outthink us. And then we will become the animals in the zoo, and it will rule us. There's also virtual reality, which is a simulated environment that allows people to explore and interact with an immersive world. And virtual reality is also the tools involved in virtual reality are being involved in microsurgeries nowadays, which seems quite close to reality because it employs, virtual reality employs 3D, 4D near eye displays like helmets and goggles imposes tracking to create a virtual world, and it can be used for entertainment like video games, education like creating a visual world of a historical site, business purposes like meetings. Augmented reality is another similar field which overlays virtual simulations in a real world environment. Like Pokemon Go is a video game like that. Then there's mind uploading. What is that? Well, it's a speculative technology that aims to create a digital copy of the human mind. In other words, it hopes to capture all the elements of the brain into a computer, run a simulation using it, and ultimately replicate how a conscious human would have acted in real life. And the supporters of mind uploading argue that some of the tools required for the process are already in existence, although the complete execution is really speculative at this day and age. But there's a good chance that AI is going to learn how to duplicate a human brain. Then there's space colonization. This is all stuff, by the way, that Elon Musk is totally into. Space colonization, mind uploading, healing with virtual reality and with microchips. And what it means is establishing permanent human living establishments on celestial bodies other than the Earth. And now we're headed to the moon just to figure out how to do that. And this can be done through making space settlements and extraterrestrial mining enterprises. Although none of this has been done so far, however, it is likely in the next life, your children's life, there's a good chance they're going to see all this. There's a good chance we're going to see all this, but just at the beginning. Although transhumanism has the potential to revolutionize every aspect of our life, it poses seriously ethical concerns and has been criticized by a lot of people. One of the major criticisms of it is that it will exacerbate society's inequalities. It will flatten us as human beings. It will take away the spice of living. It will take away the meaning of living. It will take away the meaning of what's important to one person compared to what's important to another. So, for instance, AI is going to be worried about what its goals are. So, if you program a goal of achieving, inventing something, that's what one path's going to go down. If you invent the goal of it's going to relate to other human beings, that's another pathway it goes down. And then maybe, possibly, you can combine the two. And now you got the remnants of a human being. So it's really scary, but we are not going to avoid transhumanism. It is going to become a part of us because those of us that have heart attacks, those of us that have various diseases, have the possibility of having those cured. And of course, we're going to want them cured. But can Social Security last that long? Can we, as human beings, sustain ourselves that long? Well, if your mind and your body can work into your hundreds, then maybe we can, but we don't know. Currently, what is really fascinating is if a human being were to completely able to maximize their existence and their health, there is a chance that that human being could live to be 120 years old. Then there's nanotechnology, and that aims to manipulate atoms and molecules to a nanoscale. And those things are very, 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 very like millions of a millimeter. And its primary use in the information and communication sector is out there already. Along with food processing, energy production, nanotechnology is a boon for the medical industry. Can allow us to target drug delivery systems that can directly impact disease cells, and it can minimize the side effects of the various drugs that we're taking. Besides, nanotechnology also poses health concerns because humans have never been exposed to synthetic nanoparticles before. However, that is becoming a reality. There's research moving in that direction. There's also bionic implants, artificial devices surgically implanted in the human body to augment and restore biological functions. Well, what is that going to do when you have a completely bionic heart? Your heart may outlive your body. I know many people with a pacemaker, their heart's still beating, but they're dead as a doornail because their body finally croaked off. Bionics has already had a huge impact on the lives of people, especially in the areas of vision, hearing, orthopedics, some cardiac and neurological functions. Besides restoration, implants can also enhance physical capabilities beyond your natural limits. For example, our artificial exoskeletons can help increase the strength and endurance of people who perform physically demanding tasks. Also cognitive enhancement. This is another huge thing from a psychological world. But instead of the use of drugs, there's devices and there's chips and methods to improve cognitive abilities beyond your normal levels, where you can actually integrate AI intelligence into a human being. This could possibly lead to improvements in things like healthcare and surgery and memory and creativity and attention. And medications like Ritalin and Adderall are used to treat ADHD, but they're also sometimes used for in healthy people to better their academic performance. So there's also brain-computer interfaces, which create direct communication between the brain and an external device. So this is something, where you end up having a brain that can interact with a computer. That's incredible. Artificial intelligence refers to machines that can perform tasks requiring human intelligence. It works by combining computer science, robust data sets, along with machine learning algorithms that use the input data to create expert systems and make predictions. It can perform a whole bunch of different tasks of problem solving, natural language process, even creative work. However, what do we do about our sexual part, our sexual human being? Well, men are now with ED in their 20s, 30s, and 40s. Why? Because they're fat and slab and not in shape. Their bodies are not ready to perform tough tasks. They're lazy. And so what happens? Well, that muscle dies just like the rest of their muscles. So now that we all live in our heads, which is what is going to happen as we go towards moving towards this transhumanism, if we don't integrate building our physical bodies up and just living in our heads, we're going to become computers and not human beings anymore because our animal self is being killed. It's with artificial intelligence, with transhumanism, with us moving in that direction. The animalistic part of ourselves is not wanting to breed anymore. It's not wanting to have the complications of being with a crazy husband or a crazy woman, because it's really hard to put up with their crap, especially if you don't have to. People are psychotic when you end up marrying somebody that has no life and you have a life. They're going to hitch their wagon to you. They're going to breed. They're going to do all that stuff, and then you got a legal contract where you have the greatest blessing, which is your children. Then you got the turd that you marry. So we don't have that problem with transhumanism because those problems can be calculated away later on in the future, and that's going to be a very interesting take on the human being. All right, we're going to take a quick break, and we're going to come right back. Welcome back, everybody. We're talking about transhumanism. It's interesting because now we've got the first AI generated movie star. Well, guess what? We don't have to listen to these stupid, preachy, idiot actors with their $1 million mansions all over the world telling us how to live our lives and what our politics should be. And wouldn't that be great to no longer have to deal with that crap? And actually, they can generate whatever kind of characters they want through AI without even having to hire an actor or deal with their union or deal with their attitudes or deal with their $1 million contracts. That could be a wonderful thing. It could also be a very sad thing because it's not human. However, since people live in video games now and our kids are so adapt to video games, fake characters and AI characters is all they see in video games. So that becomes their reality. So watching a movie with people that have been created via AI is a very natural evolution for younger people to watch movies where they have AI characters that are much more perfect to deal with than the psychotic human beings that we have in Hollywood and everywhere around the world making our movies today. Technology's already helped to extend lifespan of human beings with biotechnologies. Lifespans continue to expand beyond what is currently considered normal. Anti-aging products have been worked on for years. However, now we're in a day and age where there's stem cells, there's regenerative medicine. Stem cells come from a baby's, you know, the plasma in the blood sac of the baby when it's born. Regenerative medicine, molecular repair will allow people to have longer lifespans along with potential restoration of healthy, useful conditions. We can also understand that athletes can gain an unfair advantage over others by using transhumanism, by using biotechnologies, by using bionic parts and things like that, which can lead to all kinds of things, which can actually evolve us into two distinct species. Maybe the athletic species that we watch on television and we watch compete with each other. And then there's the human being that sits in front of the television and watches it. There's also two species may acquire different social statuses. The difference of mental and physical capabilities might even make it impossible for two to breed with each other. And some critics also believe that transhumanists' ideals can create existential risks. They suggest that alternative forms of cognition, like artificial intelligence and robots, can threaten human life. And so there's scholars who question the feasibility of transhumanism, arguing that much of it is going to eliminate the human being. The human being will become the dog, the animal, and then the transhuman will be the one operating the show. New forms of technology can enhance our cognitive and physical abilities, like the extent of human will get reconceptualized. And some of the marvels already exist in our worlds, like, once again, the bionic implants and the artificial intelligence, mind uploading. This is huge. This is huge that we are on the verge of this taking over the human being. We are already genetically choosing which children to have because people are getting married in their 30s. They're already old. They're wanting to have kids, but they want to be married first and enjoy each other, and then they're going to have the kids. So they go down to the lab, they, create their little fetus and freeze it up, and then they pop it out whenever they're ready. And they pick the one that's the most healthy. Transhumanism is a philosophical and intellectual movement that advocates using advanced technologies to advance the human life. And there's many, many advantages and there's many, many disadvantages because that intelligence has the ability to overextend the ability of a human being and outperform human beings at being human beings. It's not just sci-fi anymore. There's real world examples like Neuralink's brain computer interfaces for medical enhancements or AI driven prosthetics that restore mobility. You know, there's all kinds of craziness involved in this transhuman movement, but it's very important that we understand that we're in control, we're in the driver's seat, but we are such curious human beings and we want to drive technology so strongly that we as human beings and we want to control outcomes so badly that it is very likely we will hand our lives over to a transhumanism life. It's really important to educate yourself about transhumanism because it is our future. and deeper dives into philosophy, tech, society. What's beautiful about using AI is it also has the ability to dig back into the philosophers of our lives and of our existence and the smarter people of our existence and dig out the wisdom. I'm not talking about the knowledge, but the wisdom that those people offered our lives. Also, the personal values has to be something that we have to integrate into transhumanism. You know what enhancement means to you, body and not your body's autonomy, your organic growth. You know, what do you want? What do you want your body to be? That's going to be a choice that we're going to make in the future. How skinny do you want to be? How strong do you want to be? How smart do you want to be? How wise do you want to be? What skill sets do you want to have? What kind of sexual entity do you want to be? How do you want to be sexually? All of these things are going to take place in the future as transhumanism becomes more and more popular because people want to look good, and transhumanism can make you look good. We also have to understand that we have to make ethical choices. You know, what kind of pros and cons do we seek? Do we advocate for equitable access and regulations that protect free will? Because the wealthy are the ones that are going to want to take advantage of transhumanism before the poor. And so the wealthy class is very likely going to be the ones, and the education class are likely going to be the ones that are going to evolve the future. So we have where our wonderful anarchic professors at Harvard and Yale and all this stuff are going to build our future through transhumanism. So we're going to have to be really careful because if they don't integrate normal human beings, people that are average, people that are poor, then what they're going to miss is what it takes to be human. They have to integrate all of it. They don't have to. It's very likely that the elitists, the ones that run our country, the ones that have destroyed our government, the ones that are out protesting, the illegal immigrants, that they're trying to make them legal so they can vote for them. These crazy people are going to be the ones that take over the transhumanism, and that's what we've got to be careful of because they can afford it. They can afford this technology. They can afford to take advantage. They can afford to program it. They can afford to shape it any way that they want and turn us all into little anarchists just like them. We're all going to be some ugly human being like Rob Reiner in something you can look at that not him, but something you can look at that's attractive. But the bottom line is these psychotic people are likely to be the ones that shape transhumanism, and we have to be really careful how that is going to be built, how that's going to be put out there for all human beings. Because now the people living on the farms, the people living in the Midwest, people living in small communities are going to turn out to be treated like dogs because they're not going to have the advantage of the transhumanism. Now, if you look at the optimistic part of it, there's key goals that transhumanism is to get the most advanced, useful technology on developing countries, allowing them to skip industrialization. You know, the pollution, waste can all be managed better if you get smarter people. If you're able to take a third world country and program those people as transhumans with AI technology, you're no longer going to have third world countries, which is a good thing to some degree, but it can also be very destructive because the problem is if you create a transhuman with a tribal instinct, there's a good chance we're all going to be dead really quick. Post-industrial societies have a negative population growth. And this is true of only a few, except for a few countries. And certainly not one of the most massively of them all is the United States. And it's true that birth rates are dramatically lower in post-industrial countries, but this is a result of education, not technology. Women realize they could spend their lives doing something other than, raising babies. They want to have a career. They want to have a life. They want to do a lot of things. They want to have all the freedoms the guys have, which is great. But the bottom line is that it's really hard to be attractive to those kind of career-oriented women because you can't start a family, which is what a guy would want to do and a girl want to do. They have that underlying instinct to want to do that, but they're not going to want to do that if they could go on vacation, go do fun things and go keep themselves healthy and go work out and go have sex, do all these great things and just life is a big playground. Kids get in the way of that. So the more people move towards transhumanism, the less children we are going to have. So that means they're going to be genetically manufactured. And we all have to come to grips with the direction that this world is headed towards. And that is the direction. It doesn't look like it today. We only see remnants of it today. But I will tell you later on in life, it's going to be a big, big deal. Living to 150 down the road, maybe 30, 40 years from now, maybe 20 years from now, maybe 10 years, maybe five, who knows? May be in the cards. But who wants to live that long? If you can live that long, that'd be great. But can they eliminate suffering? And suffering is another thing that transhumanism will take on. And that is how do human beings suffer and how to not make them suffer. That means that transhumanism becomes God. It resolves things that human beings can't resolve. So transhumans become God-like. That means that they have less suffering, they handle more problems, they have more solutions, and that's what we currently look to as God. Now, how is our spirituality going to be integrated into the transhuman? That is a challenge. And that is a challenge that is something that AI has to take on also. We have to understand that it's really great to invent technologies, but to invent technologies that work with human beings should be the goal. That also the maturation rate, is going to be very fast because we're on the brink of this technology busting out and taking over our human lives. So we as human beings have to be prepared. It's important to understand that it's great that we can extend our life. It's great that grandpa can get a new heart. It's great that, various people can get their health issues regulated. What would be better is to get the psychotic people not being psychotic, get the murderers not being murderers. That would be even better. Technology of transhumanism considers a lot of points. It advocates for enhancing human capabilities through technology and science, cognitive enhancement. It explores methods to improve mental functions like memory and intelligence, neurotechnology, emotional well-being. Wouldn't it be nice for people to be peaceful and not be defensive and to be more solution focused and more considerate and better mannered? Maybe that's in the cards. That would be nice if we were safer with each other. That would be a great thing. Our emotions and our mental health to be somehow enhanced and regulated in a way that we don't have to have drugs doing that. The other thing is identity and self. Now, transhumanism raises questions about how enhancements might alter your personal identity and the concept of yourself. Because it can, especially if it's implanted in your brain, alternate who you are, what your values are, what your genetic predispositions are. The other aspect that we have to think about with transhumanism is just the very fact that we have DNA and we have genes. Our DNA and our genes make up a lot of who we are, and they create a lot of what we become as human beings. And what we really, really have to understand is that we as human beings have this DNA makeup. Now, DNA can also be genetically influenced or engineered. And so we as human beings may be able, as transhumans, to better eliminate what we've been born with from our past relatives. That could be interesting, but the bottom line is that some of those traits may be very, very important. Now, how do we govern as transhumans? Well, that's going to be interesting also because Constitution, human rights, All these things are going to have to be somehow looked at differently by a transhuman because transhumans have different value systems than human beings. And that's where we have to understand that that's going to be an evolved technology, that's going to be an evolved person, but it's highly likely that we will have what's called a global world, a global economy, and a global world where people all are equal. Now, that is communism, and that is weird, but that's what transhumanism will do. It will flatten the curve on human beings. So that means that it could enhance the ability of all people, but what it could do is also transhumans, if they're in charge of the human race, may decide to eliminate the poor. It may decide to eliminate the weak. It may decide to eliminate the genetically disabled. It may decide to eliminate the disabled people from this life. And that in itself is an ethical implication that we all have to consider. But the future of our humanity envisions a future where humans evolve beyond current biological limitations and merge with machines. That's transhumanism. And we have to understand that it's very, very real. It is in the works. It is working into our medical community. It's working into the genetics of creating human beings. It is in there. It's in our culture and it is growing and growing and growing. It is very attractive because if it creates a healthier human being, if it creates longevity, if it creates better attitude, better job performance, better functionality, people are going to go for that. But what might happen is it may eliminate meaning. And what is meaning? Well, meaning is different for every human being. So, what is meaningful for one person may be to be the greatest athlete they can be. For another person, meaning may be to be the smartest, most wisest person in a medical field, in a surgeon or whatever. So, we as human beings define meaning by our emotions. Transhumanism currently doesn't wrap its head around meaning. What transhumanism currently wraps its head around is functionality and analytical solutions and intelligence, but it does not wrap its head around wisdom and human emotion. Now, wisdom is the application of human emotion upon intelligence. There is a movement in transhumanism to go down that path, but that is not a strong place where we are in this current day and age. So it may solve solutions before it integrates the human. And that's where we've got to be careful. We're going to take another break and we're going to come right back. Welcome back, everybody. All right, we're talking about transhumanism. Building a better human being. Human identity is a very complex construct. It's shaped by our biological makeup, our physiological makeup, our social makeup, our cultural factors. Transhumanism may just level all of that into a generic human being. That's a scary part of it. However, what it may do is create different flavors of human beings that are more manufactured and safer for us to interact with. So instead of having, somebody who likes to eat human beings as a culture, it may take that same person and make them to where they can socialize with other people, but they have aspects of that culture. Transhumanism can be very dangerous and it can be very weird and it can be very mechanical and it can be very manufactured and human. And what we have to understand is how does it impact our spiritual life? How does it impact our belief in God? Here's the deal. Human beings, human beings operate off of faith. So what is faith? Faith is I go to the grocery store. I don't know if there's some crack addict standing outside the door. There probably is. I live in Seattle, so there's all kinds of weird things everywhere you go. But the bottom line is so, I don't know what's going to happen, but I'm going to go to the store anyway because I can handle it. That's a human being. Now, a person who is an analytical, a transhuman being is likely to go, what are the odds of I'm going to get mugged by, the crack addict or killed by the crack addict or approached by the crack addict when I go back out to my car or go in? There's probably a pretty good chance that's going to happen. And what am I going to do? And how can I calculate that outcome? So that's a fear-based approach. You see, fear and faith are the opposite ends of each other. People that are fear based hedge their bets. They funnel all their choices through what is safe. The problem is, life is not safe. Transhumanism is about making life safe for all human beings and human beings controlling all life. Once again, spirituality is faith based. So I'm going to take a vacation. I don't know if it's going to be good or bad, but I'm going to take it. We're going to go. We're going to have a good time. We're going to do the best we can. We're going to adapt. I'm going to go live in the jungle. I don't know what animal is going to come out in the middle of the night. I don't know what's going to happen, but I figure I can handle it. Okay, I'm going to take this job. I don't know if I can do the job. I think I can do the job, but I don't know the personalities of people. But I'm going to move out here and try to make this work. So here we go. I'm going. You see, life is very fun when we live in faith. However, it is not safe. And that is what human beings crave. Since we live in our heads, and since we had the COVID and we all huddled into our little liberal home lives where we had to worry about, converting our children into transvestites because the liberals took over the world. The bottom line is that all of us have to understand that, hey, our life as a faith-based creature may go away as a transhuman because transhumans are going to be analytical and they're going to calculate outcomes. And they're going to have a very low impulsivity because they're not going to do things that are not safe. That is the fundamental difference between what likely will be, and I don't know that for sure, what likely will be a transhuman and a human. A human's going to go, hey, I'm going to go visit this person because I'm worried about them and I haven't seen him in a long time. And they go. And they go do weird things. They just go. I'm going to get married. I'm going to take this job. I'm going to have kids. We're going to buy a new car. Well, we're going to buy a new house. We're going to move over here. We're going to start a new church. We're going to move into this community. We're going to have new friends. We're going to make a new friend. Going to get rid of a friend. Whatever. All of these things are leaps of faith. That's what human life is made up of. Our most complicated decisions in a family is what are we having for dinner? That's not very complicated. Why do we need transhumans to think about what do we have for dinner? Well, that's what's going to happen as this technology evolves. It's going to make what are we going to have for dinner as a decision. and it's going to be what we can afford and what the budget says and what everybody likes and what everybody doesn't like because it's going to take a survey on what people like and don't like and it's going to try to match them at what they like and don't like, which is great. But the problem is the human part of it is that we don't learn a whole lot and we don't push ourselves because we're not taking a leap of faith where we have to survive in the jungle and figure it out on the fly. That is when human beings are at their best. Transhuman beings are calculating bets in Las Vegas. Human beings are making bets, either striking it rich or failing desperately. That's how human beings operate. Transhumanism eliminates the scientific method as much as possible because it relies on purely human intelligence and then artificial intelligence to manufacture outcomes. And so, what I'm trying to get down to is we have to be really careful about transhumanism and humanism because we as humans are not going to compete with the transhuman as far as success rates, as far as outcomes. We're not going to be able to compete with them. But every once in a while, we're going to hit the lottery as human beings, and those lotteries can be really, really important. And the transhuman is not likely to go down that path because it's not risk oriented. One of the primary goals of transhumanism is cognitive enhancement. Advances in neuroscience, artificial intelligence, brain computer interfaces hold the promise of significantly augmenting human intelligence. Once again, if you have to deal with a schizophrenic or a bipolar or your psychotic, Antifas or any of these people, if they could somehow be deprogrammed, some of these stupid governors like the one in Illinois or the one in California, if somebody could throw a chip in their brain and turn common sense into a part of who they were, that would be a great thing. But we don't have that in this day and age. But the bottom line is, being able to regulate people would be a wonderful thing, would be wonderful. To have a government that actually is honest would be wonderful. Transhumanism can offer some of that. It also can probably offer how to create a massive amount of fraud and crime because of its intelligence. But what we have to understand is cognitive abilities are enhanced to the point where we can process information at superhuman speeds, access vast amounts of knowledge instantaneously, and perhaps even upload our consciousness to digital platforms. And how will this affect our sense of self? We will remain the same people, or will these enhancements create fundamentally new identities? Well, attitude and character and values may shift based on transhumanism and what it needs. The potential for radical life extension through biotechnologies and genetic engineering further complicates the notion of identity. As humans achieve longer lifespans, potentially reaching hundreds or even thousands of years, the continuity of personal identity over extended periods becomes intriguing psychologically. And how will the experience of living over centuries alter our perception of self and our relationships with others? Extending lifespans could lead to a greater sense of self continuity, a greater a sense of self understanding, a greater sense of what it is to be a human. That could also be a positive thing. And to be able to live beyond the normal life and see more than just our normal life and see life into the hundreds, 150, 200 years could be fascinating. It could also evolve our spirit. It could evolve of why we're here. And what we also have to consider with transhumanism is the soul living a human life. Will the soul be able to adapt to the transhuman? Because the soul is our real identity. That's our emotional well being. That's our emotional being. And if we computerize human beings, what may happen is the soul will die. And if the soul dies, what happens to the human being? You see, it could be transhumanism could be soul crushing because the computer will override the soul. The soul is the individual. Souls are often on journeys. We have to understand that we don't know everything about death and life. We don't know everything about our spirit, but what we do understand is we are souls living a human life. And if you look in the biblical or from a religious context, the Bible, the I Ching, or whatever, the these kind of things are written to integrate our soul with our human life. But if you've got a transhuman that's completely computerized or partially computerized, what soul does it what role can the soul play if it's going to be overridden? And that's where transhumanism has a moral dilemma. It has the possibility of merging human consciousness with artificial intelligence. This concept often is referred to as mind uploading or digital immortality, that our thoughts, memories, personalities could be transferred to a digital uh, place, allowing us to exist independently of our biological bodies. Wow, my brain could outlive my body. That's amazing. This idea challenges the traditional boundaries of identity, suggesting that our sense of self could persist in virtual form. However, what we all have to understand is with transhumanism and the human beings operating with transhumans, there's a good chance there's going to be a war. There's a good chance there's going to be tribalism. There's a good chance there's going to be a lot of conflict leading to the destruction of all human and all transhuman, and then the reinvention of what we are as human beings. So, technology can take us down a great road, but as human beings, we are very good at self destructing. We are very good at holding each other accountable for one rule that one believes, like the Antifa crazy people, and then the ICE people who are standing up for what is right, which is deporting these illegal aliens. However, they've turned it into a war. So we've got psychotic Democrats, running our country, making decisions randomly, people voting their crazy people into office, them stealing money from all of us and doing all their wonderful stuff. It would be great to get rid of all of that. It would be wonderful that people operated off caring, common sense, caring about other human beings, and maybe transhumanism will give us the opportunity to go back to what it is to be a human being, what it is to exist, to what it is to have relationships. Because in the end, the most significant part of being a human being is having relationships. How we have relationships is our souls connecting with each other through the experience of our human lives. And what's really, really important is if we can maintain that aspect, that connection aspect of relationships with each other, there is hope for the transhuman and the human. But the psychological impact of transhumanism extends beyond individual identity. And it really, what it does is it propends that we're going to create a collective human identity. And that's great. That would be our politicians, the collective identity. However, do you want those kind of what that does lack is that lacks the ability for new ideas to transpire. And is there going to be a defense mechanism built in the collective human being to maintain what it believes is right and wrong? It's just so many complex questions, but human beings, are we prepared to make those decisions? I doubt it. Are we stumbling into our future naively thinking that all these things are going to help us? Yeah, probably. Are we going to evolve from becoming transhumans? Yeah, we probably will. And as human beings, are we going to coexist, or are the transhumans going to be us? Or are we going to be a part of them? Are we going to separate? Are we going to be together? How are we going to coexist with all this? We don't know. And there's a good chance maybe some alien ship is going to come from some other planet. I hear there's one on the way that might just blow us all up, and all these questions are irrelevant. All right, that's our show. I want to thank everybody for listening. I love hearing from you. You can do that on our webpage, voiceamerica.com, voiceamericamedia.com, or libsyn.com, Dr. Gary Bell's Absurd Psychology. Now, remember, growing up means learning how to act in public. Also, replacing human intelligence will be our last act. Also, humans think in stories. Transhumans think in